Daniel Andrews under fire today after a corruption inquiry found evidence of misconduct and improper influence at the highest levels of his government. It's a damning verdict on the Andrews government. At the heart of this inquiry was a $1.2 million contract awarded to the Labor-affiliated Health Workers Union on the eve of the 2018 state election. Today, the IBAC report, called Operation Daintree, finally was tabled. An anonymous tip-off sparking a series of inquiries, first by the Ombudsman and then by the corruption body. IBAC Commissioner Stephen Farrow today said the HWU was given privileged access and favourable treatment in its access to ministers' offices.
Every year the government spends billions of dollars procuring goods and services, and it's very important that we can be confident that those decisions about choosing which suppliers are made in the public interest. In this case, there were concerns that it didn't go to a competitive procurement process, which would ordinarily be the case. And so it's very difficult for us to be confident that it was made in the public interest. And in fact, the training that was provided was inadequate.
So here's what that corruption inquiry found: that the contract was awarded because senior staff in the department believed it was the minister's and government's preference, and because of ongoing pressure from both the Minister for Health's advisor and the Secretary of the Union. It also found that senior public servants failed to ensure this contract was awarded in the public interest. It found there was a conflict between the government's interest in procuring the most suitable supplier and the Labor Party's interest in helping an affiliated union. The report found there was a conflict of interest that was not properly managed or declared. It found misconduct and breaches of duty by ministerial advisors and public servants. It found that advisors in the Premier's private office, his own private office, as well as the Minister for Health's office, interfered in the management of the contract to stop consideration of its termination and to ensure that it continued. Ministerial advisors and their influence in government has grown, the report found, from 7 or 8 under Steve Bracks about 20 years ago to now 70 or 80 in Daniel Andrews' office, and a total of 286 across all ministerial offices. But the report said there has been no increase in transparency or accountability for their conduct. The key figures that the probe focused on: Diana Asmart from the Health Union, Daniel Andrews' private office, and the offices of Health Ministers Jill Hennessy and Jenny Mikakos, along with senior executives in the department. Mikakos gave evidence that the Andrews government is very centralised, with the Premier's private office having its tentacles everywhere, she said. Now, the corruption body stopped short of finding evidence of corrupt conduct as defined under the Act, but the Commissioner did find evidence of misconduct and improper influence, and he found that the breaches of duties leave the public sector vulnerable to significant risks of corrupt conduct occurring in the future. There's no question. By any measure, these are damning findings. But if you were listening to Premier Daniel Andrews today, you wouldn't know this. He showed no contrition.
But we're grateful for that educational report and those 17 findings, those 17 recommendations, I should say, and we will get on with that work and update you. I do want to make a couple of points. There are no findings against anyone in this report. It is an educational report, and they're not my words. That's the way in which IBAC themselves have described this. But the recommendations do go to a number of serious matters, important matters, and we will give proper consideration as part of a proper cabinet government process to each of those. Wow.
Educational, no findings against anyone. I'm sorry, but did Daniel Andrews actually read this report? He's either deluded, a master at spin, or both. Or it's just that his grip on power is so uncontested, so irrefutable, that he thinks he can get away with saying anything and the media and the public will believe him. His response there that you just saw, truly Kafkaesque, saying there are no findings against anyone when the Corruption Commissioner was so damning. The Australian's Rachel Baxendale describes the report as a devastating blow to Daniel Andrews' government's integrity. She writes that IBAC's operation, Daintree, offers a rare and at times galling insight into how Andrews manages to exert maximum control while evading culpability. She writes that the staff claim they were never told to award the HWU contract, but she says they knew what their bosses wanted and they made it happen. And the Australian's Victorian editor Damon Johnson will be on the show with me tonight to discuss all of this. Now, the opposition in Victoria is even more hopeless than the Andrews government, but the opposition leader, John Pesutto, has today said that Andrews should consider his position.
I'm saying to the Premier that, given the circumstances, a table full of reports, a table that won't be big enough soon to accommodate the coming reports, it is time now for the Premier, after all of these reports, to seriously consider his position. And he and his colleagues need to think about who else inside the Andrews government can step forward to try and tackle these issues. Whilst the report is there for you all to see, I think the key drawings from the report are that whatever happened because of the leadership he provides, and that leadership is nowhere near where it needs to be in terms of standards of integrity and the proper use of taxpayers' resources.